Hello and welcome to the Naru FastCast with your hosts, Dave and Josh Masson.
Pull up a chair and listen to us discussing fasting and health-related topics.
Hi and welcome to another episode of the Naru FastCast. So today I'm going to talk to you about probably the most asked topic that we get, and it's about, does things break a fast? Now I really appreciate why this question is asked by so many people, because obviously if you're spending the effort to fast, then you're going to want to make sure that you're not impacting that by having things during that period. And it really just comes down to your goals of fasting. Now, I'm sort of really strong believer of, if you're doing something and you feel positive, you're happy, you are sexually active, you can sleep, you can go to the toilet properly, you don't get any problems after eating, you are healthy, happy, don't change anything. So if you read this and think, well, I do that, and you kind of go, well, I'm in the shape I want to be, and I'm happy, I want to be in this way, then don't change things, because it isn't about doing everything because someone else says it and someone else says you shouldn't. It's all about you and how you feel. So this is a problem, is like, you hear these things, people tell you to do these things all the time, but I just think if it's working for you, don't change things. So in a nutshell, you want to work out with what your goals are. And I have to admit that this did make a massive difference. So Josh and I have been fasting for around about 8 years, and I spent quite a bit of time actually not fasting correctly. So I would not be eating but having milk in my coffee. And it was one of those things where it's about 4 years ago, and I was like, oh yeah, I need to definitely cut that out. And thinking that I was doing it right, and just because I was actually fine, healthy, happy, all those things I talked about at the start. But there was one thing that I found that I wasn't helping, was that I wasn't getting to the leanness that I had done previously when I had been very strict. And it took me a while to kind of work out what it was. And then I was like, right, well, I'm going to go to black coffee. And instantly I was like, wow, that's made a massive difference with, how much leaner I am, and my body composition really changed, because I was able to sort of really jump into ketosis and just have a small amount of time in ketosis than I was before. And it also did have an effect actually on how well my gut responded to fasting as well. That went through the roof. Like I literally don't get any problems with migraines, headaches, and all those types of things after changing that one thing. So sometimes it can be something that's staring you right in the face, and you can become slightly lazy on doing things that you didn't realize before that could actually have a really big impact. So usually the kind of goals people have around fasting is, one, for ketosis. And ketosis is a process where your body breaks down stored fat and turns it into energy, and then it basically goes into ketones. Okay, so the ketones are used in the brain, and they are used for energy around the body. And the good thing about them as well is, when you're in ketosis, you produce more GABA, and GABA is a neurotransmitter that basically mimics like Valium. So it helps to slow down the mind and cause a bit of calmness in the brain and concentration as well. So it's why they use it for children that have non-responsive epilepsy. They put them on a ketogenic diet. So ketosis is great. I love ketosis if I'm not able to eat and I kind of am fasting. And you basically know when you're kind of in ketosis, because you can get, your breath can smell a little bit, but also you kind of don't feel hungry. And that's another sign that you're going into ketosis. And that sort of adaptation of being able to switch into ketosis is really, really key, because it's kind of like a primal safe mechanism that would have saved us in the past. When we ran out of food, as again I mention this every podcast, but we have between 42 and 100,000 calories on us. So it's kind of ancestrally conserved mechanism that allows us to basically access this food that we're storing. We don't just eat food and then it just goes and then we're hungry straight after. The reason is because we have hormones like insulin that store our food away in fat cells or in, as energy into like our muscles and things like that, as glycogen. So our body is geared up to store food, and this is why people get fatter and fatter and fatter. Is because the body does want to store food. It holds it there because when we go into ketosis, when we run out of food, when we're in a source of like nutrition deficiency, we don't just starve to death. And that's been something that's been able to, as a species, be a real benefit for us, is that metabolic switching, which is the whole point of really doing this, is being able to allow your body to switch between different energy sources efficiently without a huge amount of energy, and to make sure you don't have to eat all the time and have food around you all the time, because we would never have been in this state 300 years ago where we just had food in our fingertips from Deliveroo, or from walking across the shops and things like this, and having fridges and all these types of things. We just wouldn't have had that. So we would have had to wait to eat, and by doing that we would have constantly been causing our body to jump into our food supplies to carry us through that period. It's a bit like having a full fridge and then going, I'll just go and do another weekly shop. Well, you just wouldn't do that. And whereas when we didn't have that option, we had to just eat the food in the fridge rather than go and buy more food, which is effectively, when we're overweight, you go and buy more food rather than tap into your stores through, regularly. So you do a little bit of fat burning, in the day, but it's enough to just obviously over time to help reduce weight. I just want to interrupt today's podcast. Josh and I have spent the last 8 years trying to work out how we can get minerals into our body during our fast without breaking it. So me such as research, right? So we thought, well, why don't we make some? And therefore other people seem to have the same problem, so we can solve that problem for them. So that's exactly what we've done. We've spent 3 years developing this product, and now we have just brought it to market. So if you want to go and try and see how much better it makes you feel having electrolytes during your fasting period, then go over to the website now. We have got 25% off. Go and grab it. It tastes delicious, and I can promise you that it's going to make your fasting experience so much better. So don't just take our word for it. Go over there, grab some today. And that's where it's important to have that kind of concept of calories in, calories out, because you do have this 40 to 100,000 calories on you. That is part of the equation. So calories in and calories out, yes, of course it makes a difference, but the irony of it is that if you are actually eating less calories, your body has this kind of built-in mechanism of going, okay, well, you on average burn about 2,000 calories, for example, and you're actually choosing to eat 1,500 calories. Therefore, there's a deficit of 500 calories. The body's not going to starve itself to death. It's a clever machine built for survival. So what it basically does is 70% of your basal metabolic rate is used up by, 70% of your calories is made up by your basal metabolic rate. So just keeping the lights on takes up 70% of your calories, which is like, 1,700 calories, for example, around about of your daily intake of calories is just used for keeping the lights on. So your body then just slows that rate of burning down, and that means then that's why some people start feeling tired and they start having lack of energy, and it's because the body basically just lowers it down. Okay, and it makes a huge difference, because what people then go and do is they go, I'm tired, I need to have more food, maybe I'm lack of sugar, or maybe I need more caffeine, and so what you need to try to do is actually encourage your body to be able to metabolically switch. So when you are having lower amounts of food in your body can dip into its reserves to find energy. But yeah, your body is really quite a clever machine, really, and it's not going to it's not going to start eating itself if it doesn't need to. So the second thing is that we need to focus on, well, not to focus on, but the other thing is things like autophagy. So if you're doing fasting for longevity, it really makes a big difference, because we've talked about ketosis and weight management, but autophagy is basically it helps to maintain good cellular function. And that sounds ridiculous, but it's the problem. It's basically what aging is. cells start to not be able to produce energy. They start to malfunction, and they start to, proliferate in different ways. This is where you get sort of cancerous cells, things like that. So if we can help to remove like senescent cells that aren't functioning properly, then that is so important. Now, for autophagy, we need to be fasting for at least 17 hours or more, have a high fat on that day, and slightly low carbohydrate and small amounts of protein. So that just allows you to go into that fasting stage and hit autophagy. And like I said, autophagy fasting, you want to maybe do 1 to 3 times a week. And it's, I do it Monday to Wednesday for me, because it just works on my work routine and the way that I do my fasting. So the next thing is resting the gut, because the human digestive system, it basically is about rhythms. Okay, so at night time the body is not expecting food, so it kind of slows down things like saliva, gastric acids, digestive enzymes, bile salts, intestinal paralysis, which is basically like the way that your body moves things around it, all kind of slow down at night time, because they're going to go into repair, where they repair the kind of mucus in the gut wall that protects it. And these sort of fluctuations, so the proportion or the makeup of your microbiome, so the bacteria in your gut actually oscillate throughout the day, so they change as well. So this is why your microbiome is so important to look after. 70 to 80% of immune cells are present in the gut, and therefore there is this intricate play between how healthy your gut is, how healthy your brain is, because the vagus nerves wraps around the outside of the gut. So, it's why 90% of things like serotonin are produced in the gut, because it basically travels to the brain and it's using the brain. But there's such a link here. So not only for mental health, but for physical health, it's important that we do have a focus on our gut. And we've talked about this before, where the gut is really important, because fasting is important with the gut, because fasting helps you to produce more producing bacteria. Now, butyrate is a long-chain fatty acid that's basically used by the bacteria, used by your enterocytes in the cell wall to keep strong, because we don't want to get a leaky gut where the cells open up and they release food allergens and things like lipopolysaccharides, which is like LPS or endotoxin into the blood, because those things cause inflammation and they can cause a raft of problems like low mood, etc. So those things are all kind of important. So just to summarize, fasting is important to kind of understand what your goal is, whether it's ketosis, rest in the gut, weight management, or autophagy. Or it might be all of those things. And that's where it's key to sort of understanding what you should be having during your fasting period. Now, obviously, nothing is equal for everybody. So they reckon that around about 10 calories, during your entire fast is enough to prevent autophagy. So if you're fasting for 17 hours, within that 17 hours, if you have more than 10 calories, then it can interfere with your fast. Now, it's important to note that things like coffee will have 2 to 3 calories per 236 mils. So basically for every cup, it will have around about, if you look at some of the things like Starbucks or Costa, they'll say that they have about 5 calories per every Americano. So if you think about having how many coffees you have during your fasting period, is also really important, because those calories can rack up quite quickly if you're not being mindful. Now, things like you want to be getting electrolytes during your fasting period is super important for helping with hunger, for hydration, for attention, for mood, memory, all those types of things, and making sure that you're choosing the right things to have during that period. Now, if you feel like you want to have if you're hungry and you want to, maybe have some NCT oil and things like that, you kind of know that you're going to then come out of fasting for autophagy. You're going to still maybe fasting and hitting the goal for weight loss and for ketosis, but you're then also going to affect gut rest. So again, it just kind of comes down to, like we were saying before, about what your goals are and what you want to get out of it. Really pretty much, if you're not having water, fizzy water, Things like stevia don't break the fast, but we basically want to think about it in 3 different ways. Like, what's the metabolic and weight loss effect? Is it going to affect the gut resting, and is it going to affect longevity? And those kind of things are just things to keep in mind when you go to do, if you are hungry, you don't want to break your fast, but it's like maybe just try some butter in your coffee first before you go and have your lunch. It's just trying those little bits first. Or again, if you haven't had a black coffee during your fast and you've just been having water, then maybe try a black coffee. It's great for suppressing hunger and things like that. So sometimes it's worth just playing around with things during a fasting period. But there is a long list, and the reason why we've done a blog on it is because it's quite nuanced. Things like toothpaste and chewing gum and all those types of things. They don't. Again, it's kind of like, if you're going to be doing the fast, and the most important thing is doing fasting, and if you're going to have a bit of chewing gum because you're a bit subconscious, maybe because you're in ketosis and you feel like your breath's a bit smelly, for example, then have a bit of chewing gum. Everyone's tolerance levels change, and you can do things like urinating strips, or you can do blood testing to work out whether you're still in your level of ketones and things like that. But the problem is you do all that, people just end up stop doing it because it's too much of too much hassle to really kind of worry about whether it's about. I feel like it's really important to be on like how you feel. If you feel like you're fasting well, if you feel like you're in ketosis, if you feel like you're feeling better from this, your mind's calmer, you're more focused, and those types of things, then that's a great outcome. So in general, I think the important thing is to try and feel like, what do you do what is your morning routine like? What are the things you enjoy drinking? If you enjoy having Coke Zero, for example, then come onto the blog, try and find out what's in there, what sort of sweeteners in there, and just see whether it has an impact. If you I like a bit of cinnamon in my coffee in the morning. And I also obviously have cinnamon and salt in my coffee in the morning. And then I will sort of start with some Naru Revive, which doesn't break your fast because of the stevia in it. And I then take that, and that for me, I kind of do Naru Revive when I start. I'll then wait a couple hours, get to work, try to have my first coffee when I get to work, which is 2-3 hours after I wake up. And therefore, I feel like that recipe gives me the most energy. And some days I have, a coffee before that, and it's just sometimes, what happens, isn't it? I think if you fasting is a lifestyle, not a diet. So try not to be too prescriptive with what you do, and just try and just take everything day to day. And I feel like if you're on that goal of how you feel, then keep doing it. Again, aspartame and all these kind of artificial sweeteners, they're not great. If you want to have anything, monk fruit and stevia are the best ones to have during a fast, because they don't affect gut, they don't cause an insulin spike, and they're not going to affect your fasting. Okay. And if you want to have oils, so anything with like calories, like over 10 calories, whether that's like protein shakes, or you've got protein shakes, or you kind of MCT oils, all those types of things, they will have an impact. But again, if it means you carry on fasting for a few more hours, then I would say just have them and kind of enjoy them. But again, be more mindful about being more conscious and mindful about fasting to your best ability more often, because it's like what you put into your fasting and your health, you're going to get out. So that input-output equation, the more times that you're fasting, I hate the word clean fasting, but the more times that you're fasting more mindfully, then you're going to get to that outcome better. Sort of like that output is going to be so much more better than it is if your kind of input is 3 or 4 days a week. You're kind of just having black milky coffees and this type of stuff. So I just wanted to give like a general kind of chat about it, because you can get very granular on these things, and the best thing to do is to try and find a resource to read and just read through it and think, all right, well, I don't do any of that, so that's cool. What I'm doing at the moment seems to work and it seems to be good. I do feel like it's important to try and find, if you have something regularly, your morning coffee, for example, or you have 3 or 4, 5, 6 coffees during your day, we recommend that 4 coffees a day is really important. So 2 of those coffees could be within your fasting window, but be mindful if you're going to have a third or a fourth, it might actually stop you going into autophagy. So again, play around with it, see what works. I hope this has helped. And like I said before, if you go to our website, we've got a blog on it there, and it's really detailed, and it kind of gives you all the pros and cons. And we break it down to 3 different ways, which is weight gain, ketosis, gut rest, and we also talk about it affecting autophagy. So I hope this has been really helpful, and I really appreciate you guys listening, and hopefully we'll see you again next week.